Captain Jake Morrison stared through the main window of his ship at something he had never seen before. The alien structure floated in the empty darkness of space like a giant crystal. It was bigger than any building on Earth, stretching for miles in every direction. Strange lights moved across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. The exploration ship Horizon Dawn had been traveling through space for 8 months when they found this thing. Jake and his crew were part of humanity's first real push into deep space, looking for signs of other life among the stars. They had found planets with old rocks and dead moons, but nothing like this. This was proof that humans were not alone in the universe. "Captain, we're getting another signal from them," said Commander Lisa Brooks from her station. She was watching the communication screens with wide eyes. "It's the same message as before, but stronger now." Jake walked over to look at the strange symbols and sounds coming through their speakers. The ship's computer had been trying to make sense of the alien language for 3 days. It was slow work, but they were starting to understand pieces of it. "What do we know so far?" Jake asked. Dr. Peter Hayes looked up from his science station. He was a thin man with gray hair who studied alien life forms. "The signals are definitely from intelligent beings. They seem to be trying to talk to us, but there's something strange about how they're doing it." "Strange how?" "Well, sir, most of the message seems to be some kind of greeting, but there are parts that sound almost like prayers or maybe warnings. It's hard to tell." Lisa frowned at her screens. "Captain, I think they want to meet us. They've been sending coordinates for a spot halfway between our ships." Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. First contact with an alien race. He had trained for this his whole life, but now that it was happening, he felt nervous. "All right, people. This is what we came out here for. Lisa, send them a message. Back. Tell them we accept their invitation to meet. Peter, I want you to prepare a full scan of their ship. I want to know everything we can about these beings before we sit down with them." The next few hours passed quickly. The alien ship moved closer, and Jake could see more details of its design. It looked like it was grown rather than built, with smooth curves and no sharp edges. There were no obvious weapons, which was a good sign. Dr. Helen Carter came to the bridge to help with preparations. She studied how different cultures worked and was the team's expert on meeting new people. "Captain, we need to be very careful about how we act when we meet them. We don't know their customs or what might insult them. Any suggestions?" "Keep our movements slow and non-threatening. Don't point at them or make sudden gestures, and remember they might see things very differently than we do." The alien message came through again, this time with new information. Their computer had learned enough of the language to give them a rough translation. "Great ones from the void between stars," the message said. "We offer ourselves to your judgment. We await your commands with fear and hope." Jake looked around at his crew. "That's a strange way to introduce yourself to strangers." "Maybe it's just how they talk," Lisa suggested. "Some cultures are very formal." But Dr. Carter looked worried. "Captain, that doesn't sound like a normal greeting. They're talking like they think we're some kind of gods or something." Before Jake could respond, the air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer and glow. Everyone stepped back as 3 alien figures appeared out of nowhere. They had used some kind of teleportation technology to beam directly onto the human ship. The aliens were tall and thin with skin that changed colors like oil on water. They had 4 arms each and faces that were almost human-like, but with large eyes that took up much of their heads. As soon as they appeared, all 3 of them fell to the floor and pressed their faces to the ground. "Great destroyers," one of them said in broken English. "We never believed the ancient warnings were true. The legends spoke of your return, but we thought them to be old stories told to frighten children." Jake looked at his crew in confusion. No one knew what to do. He stepped forward slowly and spoke in a calm voice. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Horizon Dawn. We come in peace, looking for friendship with other intelligent species." 3. Alien who had spoken lifted his head slightly. "I am Velkithra, speaker for my people. We are called Zaphirians, but you are the ones our ancestors called the Void Walkers. The planet breakers. The race that could cross the great darkness, without need of the sacred gates. I think there's been some kind of mistake, Dr. Carter said, stepping forward carefully. We're just explorers from a planet called Earth. We've never been to this part of space before. The reaction from the aliens was immediate and frightening. Velcathara began making high-pitched sounds that might have been crying or screaming. The other two aliens pressed themselves even flatter against the floor. Earth, Velcathara whispered. The core world. The place where the great ships began their journey of consumption. You have returned to judge us all. Jake felt completely lost. Nothing about this conversation made sense. Velcathara, I think we need to talk more slowly. There seems to be some confusion about who we are. No confusion, Great One. Our records speak of your people, ships larger than cities, moving between the stars for thousands of years, vessels that ignored our attempts at contact because we were beneath your notice. We have waited in fear for your return ever since. Dr. Hayes was scanning the aliens with his instruments. Captain, their biology is fascinating. They're definitely not from Earth, but they seem to be genuinely terrified of us. But why? Jake asked. We've never met these people before. Velcathara slowly raised himself to a sitting position, though he kept his eyes down. Your people have been seen at the edges of our space for over 2,000 years. Great ships moving through the void, following paths that would take normal beings many lifetimes to complete. Ships so large they could be seen from the surface of planets, carrying entire civilizations through the darkness. Lisa was working, at her computer, trying to make sense of what the alien was saying. Captain, I think they might be talking about our old generation ships, the ones we sent out before we developed faster-than-light travel. Generation ships? Velcathara asked, the term seeming to have special meaning for him. Yes, that is what our historians call them. Vessels that carried your people for centuries, never stopping, never turning back. When our ancestors tried to make contact, your ships simply ignored them and continued on their paths. Jake was starting to understand. Humanity had sent out dozens of generation ships over the past few centuries, massive vessels designed to carry thousands of people to distant stars. The journeys took hundreds of years, with many generations being born and dying during the trip. From the outside, these ships would look exactly like what the alien was describing. Velcathara, Jake said gently, I think our peoples have never actually met before. What you've been seeing are our colony ships. They were on very long journeys to find new homes. They couldn't stop to talk because they had to stay on course. The alien looked up for the first time, his large eyes filled with confusion and fear. You mean, you were not ignoring us because we were unworthy? You were simply traveling? That's right. We didn't even know you existed until today. The silence that followed was broken by a new sound from the alien communication system. It was an emergency signal, broadcasting to every corner of space that the aliens could reach. Alert all worlds, the message said. Alert all fleets. The ancients have returned. The harbingers of the Great Silence have emerged from whatever prison held them. All species must prepare for final judgment. Jake realized that their simple, first contact meeting had just become something much bigger and more complicated than anyone had expected. Far across space on the Zaphirian command ship Shingvel Nara, alarms were screaming through every corridor. Admiral Zek Tharos ran through the ship's control center with all four of his arms moving at once. He was giving orders to dozens of crew members while trying to send emergency messages to every planet and space station his people knew about. Send the warning to all council worlds, he shouted over the noise. Send it to the Krell Empire, the Ethereal Collective, and the Synthetic Commonwealth. Tell them the Void Walkers have returned. The Destroyers of Worlds are back, and they have come to judge us all. On screens all around the control room, Zek Tharos could see the human ship floating peacefully in space. It looked small and harmless, but he knew that was part of their terrible nature. The ancient records spoke of how the ancients would appear weak and simple at first, just before they revealed their true power. Sir, called out one of his officers, we're receiving responses from the other fleets. The Krell are mobilizing their warships. The ethereals are evacuating their sacred worlds. Everyone is asking for more information. Zektheros looked at the human vessel again and felt his skin change to the dark purple color that showed deep fear among his people. Tell them what our scouts have discovered. The humans have revealed themselves to us. They speak the ancient Earth language. They come from the core worlds where the Great Exodus began over 2,000 years ago. Back on the human ship Horizon Dawn, Captain Jake Morrison was trying to understand what was happening. The emergency signals were being broadcast in dozens of different alien languages, and his ship's computer was working hard to translate them all. "Captain," said Dr. Peter Hayes, "I'm picking up massive energy signatures throughout this sector of space. It looks like several different alien fleets are heading this way." Commander Lisa Brooks was monitoring all the communication channels. "Sir, I'm counting signals from at least 12 different species. They're all talking about something called the Great Return and preparing for what sounds like the end of the world." Jake looked at Velkithara, who was still sitting on the floor of the bridge with his two companions. The Zaphirian seemed to be getting more frightened by the minute. "Velkithara, can you help us understand what's happening? Why are all these other species so afraid of us?" The alien's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a pale blue that seemed to mean sadness or fear. "Captain Morrison, you must understand that your people are not just known to the Zaphirians. Every spacefaring race in this part of the galaxy has stories about the ancient ones. We call you by different names, but we all fear the same thing." Dr. Helen Carter sat down near the aliens, trying to make herself less threatening. "What exactly do your stories say about us?" "The histories tell of ships that appeared at the edge of known space over 2,000 years ago. Vessels so large they could hold entire cities. They moved through space without using the hyperspace gates or dimensional folding that all other races need for long journeys. They traveled through the empty void between stars, as if distance meant nothing to them." Bobby Chen, the ship's historian, was pulling up files on his computer. "Wait, that timeline matches our early space exploration period. We sent out generation ships starting around 2157. Some of those missions lasted for hundreds of years." "Generation ships," Velkithara repeated, and his companions made sounds like whimpering. "Yes, that is what the ancient texts call them. Ships that carried your people for lifetimes without stopping. Ships that ignored all attempts at contact from other races." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "But surely your people understood that we were just traveling to new homes, that we couldn't stop to talk because we were on very long journeys?" Velkithara's large eyes grew even wider. "You do not understand how this appeared to us. Imagine, you are a young race just learning to travel between stars. You build your first ships that can jump through hyperspace and you think you are very advanced. Then you see vessels that dwarf your greatest cities, moving through normal space at speeds that should be impossible. They ignore your signals, your offers of trade, your pleas for knowledge. They continue on their paths as if your entire civilization is too small to notice." The human crew was starting to understand how their ancestors' space missions had been misinterpreted. Engineer Ryan Parker pulled up technical specifications for the old generation ships on the main screen. "Look at this," he said. "The ship Mayflower 7 was over 15 kilometers long and carried 200,000 people. From the outside it would have looked like a mobile city, and it was designed to operate for 300 years without stopping." 300 years, whispered one of Velkithara's companions. "A journey longer than most of our civilizations have existed." Dr. Hayes was running calculations on his computer. "If alien observers saw our generation ships passing through their space, they would have seemed almost magical. Technology that could sustain populations for centuries, moving at significant fractions of light speed without any visible means of propulsion that they could understand." Jake was beginning to see the full scope of the problem. "So for the past 2,000 years, every alien race in this region has been living in fear of us, thinking we're some kind of cosmic horror?" "Not just fear," Velkithara said, "also confusion and wonder. Your people seem to possess abilities that made no sense to us. The generation ships appeared to be proof that humans were immortal, or at least lived for thousands of years. How else could the same crews manage such long journeys?" Lisa looked up from her communication station. That's not how generation ships work, though. The original crews died along the way. Their children and grandchildren completed the missions. But we did not know this, Velkithra explained. From our perspective, it looked like your people could live forever. And when we saw human colonies being established on worlds that should have been impossible to survive on, it seemed like more proof of your supernatural abilities. Dr. Carter was taking notes as fast as she could. What do you mean by impossible worlds? Desert planets with no water, ice worlds with poisonous atmospheres, rocky moons with gravity so strong it should crush normal beings. Yet somehow humans built cities on all of these places and thrived there. Ryan Parker laughed, but not in a mean way. Those weren't supernatural abilities. That was just human stubbornness and good engineering. We're pretty good at adapting to harsh environments. But you must understand, Velkithara continued, most species can only live on worlds very similar to their home planets. We Zaphirians need specific atmospheric conditions and gravity levels. The Krell can only survive in high-pressure environments. The ethereals require constant exposure to certain types of radiation. Yet humans seemed able to live anywhere, as if the basic laws of biology did not apply to you. The implications were staggering. Jake realized that humanity's greatest strengths as explorers and colonists had been interpreted as evidence that they were some kind of unstoppable galactic plague. Captain, Lisa said urgently, I'm getting more signals from the incoming fleets. Some of them are definitely military vessels. It looks like they're planning to surround us. Are they planning to attack? Velkithra made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. Attack the ancients? No species would be so foolish, but they will want to witness your judgment of our civilizations. Some may offer tribute, hoping to be spared. Others may simply wait to see which worlds you choose to consume. Consume? Jake asked. What are you talking about? The empty regions, Velkithara said quietly. Entire star systems where our exploration ships found nothing but lifeless worlds and abandoned structures. We always assumed these were places where your people had harvested everything of value before moving on. Dr. Hayes pulled up star charts on his screen. I think I know what he's talking about. There are several regions of space where our early colony missions failed. Planets where the colonists couldn't adapt to local conditions, or where natural disasters wiped out the settlements. Failed colonies, Jake said slowly. You thought the empty worlds were places we had stripped clean, but they were actually places where our people tried to build homes and couldn't make it work. The alien skin turned a bright yellow color that seemed to indicate shock. You mean, your people can fail? Your colonies can be destroyed by natural events? Of course, Jake said. We're not gods or cosmic horrors. We're just people trying to find new places to live among the stars. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. For a long moment there was complete silence on the bridge. Then Velkithara began making a sound that the translation computer identified as either sobbing or laughing. His two companions joined, and soon all three aliens were making loud emotional noises. 2,000 years, Velkithara finally managed to say. 2,000 years of fear and preparation and building our entire civilization around the terror of your return. And you are just people. Jake looked around at his crew and then back at the aliens. I'm sorry for the confusion, but yes, we're just people. We explore space because we're curious about what's out there. We build colonies because we want more room for our families. We send generation ships because we're willing to make sacrifices so our children can have better lives. Within hours of the first emergency broadcasts, the space around the human ship became crowded with alien vessels. Captain Jake Morrison watched through the main window as ship after ship appeared from hyperspace jumps and dimensional gates. Some were massive warships bristling with weapons. Others looked like ceremonial vessels covered in gold and strange symbols. A few appeared to be cargo ships loaded with what could only be tribute offerings. Captain, Commander Lisa Brooks said, from her station, I count 47 different vessels now. They're all keeping their distance, but they're definitely watching us. Dr. Peter Hayes was monitoring the communication channels with growing amazement. Sir, we're receiving messages in 17 different languages. Most of them seem to be either pleas for mercy or offers of surrender. The most disturbing messages were coming from something called the hegemony of Krell. Their representatives were broadcasting detailed lists of their military capabilities and asking which worlds the humans wanted them to destroy as proof of their loyalty. They think we're here to give them orders, Jake said to Velkithara, who was still on the bridge with his two companions. They think we're some kind of galactic emperors. Velkithara's skin had turned a deep orange color that seemed to mean embarrassment. Captain Morrison, you must understand that for 2,000 years, every major decision made by the spacefaring races has been influenced by fear of your return. Our governments, our military alliances, our exploration patterns, everything was designed around the assumption that the ancients would eventually come back to judge us. Dr. Helen Carter was studying the alien fleet formations on her screen. It looks like they've organized themselves into groups based on species, but they're not working together. Everyone seems to be waiting for us to tell them what to do. That is exactly what they are doing, said one of Velkithara's companions, speaking for the first time. Her name was Sil Nadora, and she served as a cultural historian for the Zaphirian fleet. The prophecy of return has been studied by every civilization for generations. It says that when the ancients return, they will judge each species based on their actions during the long absence. Bobby Chen, the ship's historian, looked up from his computer. What kind of judgment? What did they think we were going to do? Sil Nadora's skin shifted to a pale blue color. The prophecies varied between species, but most agreed on the basic outline. The ancients would return to the core regions of space and call all civilizations to account. Species that had proven themselves worthy would be elevated to serve as your representatives. Those found lacking would be consumed or destroyed. A few species might be ignored entirely, which was considered almost as bad as destruction. Engineer Ryan Parker was listening to the alien communications through his headset. Captain, I think we have a bigger problem. Some of these species are starting to argue with each other about who gets to speak to us first. The Krell are claiming they have the right to represent all warrior races. The ethereals say they should be our spiritual advisors. It's getting tense out there. Jake felt a headache coming on. What had started as a simple first contact mission was turning into a diplomatic nightmare involving dozens of alien civilizations. He looked at the alien fleet surrounding his ship and tried to think of how to handle the situation. Velkithara, is there some kind of neutral leader among all these species? Someone who could help us talk to everyone at once instead of dealing with 47 different groups? The Zaphirian's skin turned bright yellow with what seemed to be surprise. You want to talk to all of us? At the same time? But great one. Surely you will choose the most worthy species to serve as your voice? To the others? I don't want anyone to serve as my voice. I want to explain to everyone that we're not here to judge anybody or take over the galaxy. We're just explorers looking for friends. The reaction from all three aliens was immediate. They began making high-pitched sounds that the translation computer couldn't identify. Sil Nadora fell over onto her side, and the third alien, whose name was Torvelak, started changing color so rapidly that his skin looked like a flashing light. Friends? Velkithara finally managed to say. The ancients want to be friends with us? Why is that so shocking? Dr. Carter asked gently. Because, Sil Nadora said from where she was lying on the floor, the ancient texts speak of the Voidwalkers as being so far above normal life that they exist on a completely different level of reality. The idea that such beings would want friendship with lesser species never occurred to anyone. Jake was starting to understand just how deeply the misunderstanding went. The aliens hadn't just been afraid of humans. They had built their entire understanding of the universe around the idea that humans were cosmic forces of nature, rather than people. Lisa, can you open a communication channel to all the ships out there? I think it's time to have a big conversation with everyone. Yes, sir. But Captain, some of these fleets have been enemies for centuries. Getting them all to listen to the same broadcast might be tricky. Tell them the ancients command it, Velkithara suggested. That will get their attention. Jake didn't like the idea of giving commands to people, but he could see that it might be the only way to get everyone to listen. All right, but I'm going to explain right away that we're not actually giving commands to anyone. The communication channel opened, and Jake found himself speaking to representatives of 47 different alien species. The variety was incredible. Some looked like giant insects, others were made of what appeared to be living crystal, and a few seemed to be pure energy contained in mechanical bodies. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon Dawn," he began. "I understand that many of you have been expecting our arrival for a long time. I want to start by saying that there has been a serious misunderstanding about who we are and why we're here." The response was immediate chaos. Dozens of different voices began speaking at once in languages the computer couldn't keep up with. Some sounded angry, others fearful, and a few seemed to be chanting or praying. "Please," Jake said, raising his voice. "Let me explain. We are not the cosmic judges or destroyers that your legends describe. We are explorers from a planet called Earth, and this is our first time meeting any of you." A voice cut through the noise, deep and rumbling, coming from one of the massive Krell warships. "Impossible," it said in heavily accented English. "The ancient records are clear. The Void Walkers have been observed in our space for over 2 millennia. Their great ships have been seen by every civilization." "You're right about the ships," Jake admitted. "But I think you misunderstood what you were seeing. Those were our colony ships, vessels carrying human families to distant stars to build new homes. They couldn't stop to talk because they were on very long journeys that took hundreds of years to complete." Another voice joined the conversation, this one sounding like music mixed with static. It came from one of the ethereal collective vessels. "You speak of journeys lasting centuries, as if they were simple matters. What beings could survive such voyages except immortals or gods?" Dr. Hayes stepped forward to help with the explanation. "The ships carried many generations of people. The original crew members died along the way, and their children and grandchildren completed the missions. It's not magic, it's just good planning and determination." The silence that followed lasted for almost a full minute. Then the questions began. "Your people die?" asked a voice from the synthetic Commonwealth. "You are mortal beings like ourselves?" "Yes," Jake said. "We live for about 80 to 100 years, just like most of you." "But the colonies on impossible worlds," protested a Zaphirian voice. "How do you survive in environments that would kill other species?" Ryan Parker took this question. "We use technology and adaptation. We build enclosed cities, modify atmospheres, and develop new equipment for harsh conditions. Sometimes our colonies fail and everyone dies. We're not immune to natural disasters or poor planning." The revelation that humans could fail and die seemed to shock the alien fleets more than anything else. Several species began broadcasting among themselves in their own languages, and Jake could tell that urgent conversations were happening on ships throughout the area. A new voice entered. The discussion, calm and measured, coming from a sleek ship that hadn't been there moments before. "I am Admiral Nex Corvain of the Galactic Mediation Council. We represent neutral parties in interstellar disputes. Are you claiming that the ancients of our legends are simply another spacefaring species?" "That's exactly what we're claiming," Jake said. "We're not ancients or gods or cosmic forces. We're just people who are curious about the universe and like to explore new places." Admiral Nex Corvain's ship moved closer to the Horizon Dawn. "This is unprecedented. Every major treaty, every defensive alliance, every exploration protocol in this sector has been based on preparing for your return. If you are not the beings of legend, then our entire understanding of galactic politics needs to be reconsidered." Jake looked around at his crew, and then at the alien representative still on his bridge. "I'm sorry if this causes problems for your governments. We had no idea that our ancestors' space missions had been misunderstood this way." 3 days after Captain Jake Morrison's galaxy-wide announcement, Fleet Admiral Patricia Reeves arrived at the first contact site with enough military power to flatten a small planet. Her flagship, the massive vessel Unity's Shield, emerged from hyperspace, followed by 12 other human ships. Patricia had received the emergency message from the Horizon Dawn while reviewing colony reports at Proxima Station, and she had wasted no time gathering a response fleet. What she found when She arrived shocked her more than anything in her 30-year military career. Hundreds of alien vessels filled the space around Jake's small exploration ship. Some were clearly warships, others looked like scientific research vessels, and many appeared to be cargo ships loaded with unknown materials. All of them were maintaining careful distances from each other, creating a complex pattern of separate fleets organized by species. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Reeves said as she materialized on the Horizon Dawn's bridge using emergency teleportation technology. "Please tell me you haven't accidentally started an intergalactic war." Jake looked tired but relieved to see her. "Admiral, it's complicated. We've made contact with dozens of alien species, but they all seem to think we're some kind of legendary cosmic destroyers who have returned to judge the galaxy." "And are we?" Patricia asked with a slight smile. "Definitely not. But convincing them of that is proving to be more difficult than expected." Admiral Reeves looked around the bridge and noticed the 3 Zaphirian aliens still sitting near the science stations. Velkithara had been working with Dr. Helen Carter for days, trying to help the humans understand the full scope of the galactic misunderstanding. "Admiral," Dr. Carter said, standing up to greet the newcomer, "we've learned some incredible things about how human space exploration has been perceived by alien civilizations. It turns out we've been the subject of fearful legends for over 2,000 years. Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Legends about what exactly?" Velkithara spoke up, his skin turning the pale blue color that indicated nervousness. "Great Admiral, your people are known throughout this region of space as the Void Walkers, the Planet Breakers, the Harbingers of the Great Silence. Every spacefaring race has stories about the massive ships that appeared at the edges of known space, and then vanished into the darkness between stars. Our generation ships," Patricia said, understanding immediately. "They were observing our early colony missions. But they misunderstood what they were seeing," Jake explained. "Ships that operated for centuries looked like evidence of immortal crews. Colonies established on harsh worlds looked like casual terraforming abilities. The fact that our ships ignored alien contact attempts looked like the behavior of being so advanced that other species weren't worth noticing." Admiral Reeves walked to the main window and looked out at the alien armada surrounding them. "How many species are we talking about?" 47 different civilizations represented here," Commander Lisa Brooks reported from her station. "But according to Velkithara, the legends about us extend throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. We could be looking at hundreds of species that have shaped their development around fear of humanity. The full implications of this were staggering." Patricia had dealt with complex diplomatic situations before, but nothing approaching this scale. "What do they want from us?" "That's the problem," Dr. Carter said. "Different species want different things. Some are offering tribute, hoping we'll spare their worlds. Others want to serve as our representatives to lesser races. A few seem to be waiting for us to give them targets to destroy, and some appear to be offering themselves for judgment, expecting us to decide whether they deserve to continue existing." Before Admiral Reeves could respond, the communication system activated with an incoming message. The voice belonged to Admiral Nex Corvain of the Galactic Mediation Council. "Human vessels, this is the neutral mediation ship Harmony's voice. We request permission to come aboard your flagship to discuss the developing situation." Patricia looked at Jake, who nodded. "Permission granted, Admiral Nex Corvain. We're prepared to receive your delegation." Within minutes, 5 alien beings materialized on the bridge using the same teleportation technology the Zaphirians had used. Admiral Nex Corvain was tall and elegant, with silver skin and 4 arms. The other delegates represented different species, including a massive insectoid being and something that looked like a walking crystal formation. "Admiral Reeves," Nex Corvain said in perfect English, "I must tell you that your arrival has created a crisis throughout this sector of space. In the past 3 days, we have received emergency communications from over 200 different governments. Some are mobilizing for war, others are evacuating their core worlds, and many are experiencing internal conflicts as their people struggle to understand what your return means." "Our return?" Patricia asked. "Admiral, we've never been here before. This is humanity's first contact with any of your species." "But that cannot be correct," said the insectoid delegate, speaking through a mechanical translator. The hive clusters have maintained detailed records of ancient activity for 1,047 of your years. Your great ships have been observed in 17 different star systems within our territory. Dr. Lucy Wade, who had arrived with Admiral Reeves as a specialist in comparative cultures, stepped forward. I think I can help explain this. We've been studying the alien reports about human activity, and we've identified the source of the confusion. She activated a holographic display showing a map of local space with ship movement patterns marked in different colors. What you've been calling ancient activity were actually our generation ships and early colony missions. But here's what's interesting. You've been interpreting our normal human behaviors as evidence of supernatural abilities. The crystal being spoke with a voice like wind chimes. Explain this interpretation. Well, for example, you've described us as beings who can survive in the vacuum of space. But that's because our ships have advanced life support systems and our people wear spacesuits during external repairs. You've called us immortal because our generation ships operated for centuries, but that's because new generations of humans were born during the journey to replace those who died. Admiral Nex Corvain's silver skin darkened slightly. You are saying that what we interpreted as supernatural abilities were actually technology and biology operating within normal parameters? Exactly, Dr. Wade continued. You've also described us as a hive mind that can coordinate across interstellar distances without communication delays. But that's just because human colonies maintain cultural connections and shared goals even when they're separated by light years. The insectoid delegate made clicking sounds that the translator rendered as agitation. But the empty worlds, the dead systems where nothing remains but ruins and silence. These are the marks of your consumption. Engineer Ryan Parker, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Those are failed colonies. Places where our people tried to build settlements but couldn't make it work. Sometimes the environment was too harsh. Sometimes disasters struck. Sometimes the colonists just made mistakes in planning or resource management. Your people can fail, the crystal being asked. Your colonies can be destroyed by natural events? Of course, Admiral Reeves said. We're not gods or cosmic forces. We're an intelligent species that explores space because we're curious and because we need room for our growing population. We succeed sometimes and fail sometimes, just like anyone else. The silence that followed was profound. Admiral Nex Corvain and his delegates exchanged what were clearly urgent communications in their own languages. Finally, the Mediation Council leader spoke again. Admiral Reeves, if what you say is true, then we are facing a situation unprecedented in galactic history. The fear of your return has shaped interstellar politics for over 2 millennia. Military alliances, trade agreements, exploration boundaries, even religious movements have all been influenced by preparations for this day. What kind of preparations? Patricia asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. The Krell hegemony has spent 800 years developing weapons designed to impress you with their destructive potential. The Ethereal Collective has built massive monuments on their sacred worlds, hoping to demonstrate their worthiness. The Synthetic Commonwealth has been working to achieve technological perfection so they could serve as your intermediaries. And these are just the beginning. Dr. Carter was taking notes as fast as she could. You're describing entire civilizations that have been living their lives based on mythology about us. Not mythology, Velkithra corrected sadly. Observation and misinterpretation. We saw your people's actions, but we understood them through the lens of our own limitations. When we saw generation ships crossing interstellar space without hyperspace technology, we could not imagine how such voyages were possible except through supernatural means. Admiral Reeves was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. So now that we've revealed that we're just normal people, what happens to all these civilizations that have built their entire cultures around fear of us? 6 months after first contact, Admiral Patricia Reeves stood in the command center of Harmony Station, the massive space station that had been built in record time to serve as a meeting place for representatives from across the galaxy. Through the wide windows, she could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station's many arms. It was a sight that still amazed her every day. The past half-year had been the most challenging and rewarding period in human history. What had started as a simple first contact mission had grown into the complete reshaping of galactic civilization. The revelation that humans were not cosmic horrors but simply determined explorers had sent shockwaves through every corner of known space. "Admiral," called Dr. Helen Carter from her workstation, "we've received the final reports from the Cultural Adaptation Council. The last of the major civilizations has officially updated their histories and government structures to reflect the new reality about humanity." Patricia walked over to review the reports. The changes had been staggering. The Krell hegemony had transformed their military from a force designed to impress cosmic judges into an exploration and defense fleet. The Ethereal Collective had opened their sacred worlds to scientific research and cultural exchange. The Synthetic Commonwealth had shifted from seeking technological perfection to developing new forms of art and philosophy. "Any major problems with the transitions?" Patricia asked. "Some, but nothing we can't handle," Dr. Carter replied. "A few extremist groups in various species still believe we're testing them by pretending to be normal beings. The zealots of the final judgment refuse to accept that the prophecies were based on misunderstandings, but they're a small minority." Captain Jake Morrison entered the command center, looking much more relaxed than he had during those first chaotic days of contact. He had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy as the human who had first revealed the truth about humanity's nature. "Admiral, the Joint Exploration Fleet is ready to depart," he reported. 12 ships representing 8 different species, all working together to map the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. Patricia smiled. The joint exploration missions had been her idea, a way to channel the galaxy's newfound energy into something positive and constructive. Instead of preparing for cosmic judgment, the various species were now working together to push the boundaries of known space. "Who's commanding the mission?" "Commander Lisa Brooks is taking the lead ship, with Vel Cathera serving as cultural liaison. Dr. Peter Hayes is heading the science team, and Admiral Nex Corvain is coordinating diplomatic protocols. It's going to be the most diverse crew ever assembled for a deep space mission." The transformation of Vel Cathera had been particularly remarkable. The Zaphirian, who had once prostrated himself in terror before humans, was now one of the galaxy's leading experts on human culture and psychology. He had written 3 books about the misunderstanding that had shaped galactic history, and his work was helping other species adapt to the new reality. "Admiral Reeves," came a familiar voice from the communication system. It was Admiral Nex Corvain, calling from the diplomatic wing of the station. "We have received some interesting news from the Outer Rim territories. Several species that were not part of our original contact network have requested meetings with human representatives." Patricia activated the video connection to see the elegant silver-skinned alien leader on her screen. "What kind of meetings?" "It appears that word of humanity's true nature has spread beyond our local sector. Species that have been isolated for centuries are now reaching out, eager to make contact with the beings they have also been fearing for generations. We may be looking at another wave of first contact situations, but on an even larger scale." The implications were exciting and daunting at the same time. Patricia had always known that humanity's expansion into space would eventually lead to contact with other intelligent life, but she had never imagined it would happen so quickly or on such a massive scale. "How many species are we talking about?" "Our long-range communications are detecting signals from at least 30 new civilizations. Some are sending messages that suggest they have similar legends about ancient wanderers or void travelers. It appears that human generation ships were observed throughout a much larger area of the galaxy than we originally thought." Dr. Lucy Wade, who had been appointed as the head of the new Institute for Interspecies Understanding, joined the conversation from her research laboratory on the other side of the station. "Admiral, this could be the key to understanding how far human exploration actually reached during the generation ship era. We might discover that our ancestors visited hundreds of star systems that we've lost track of." "Any word from those lost generation ships?" Patricia asked. "Have we made contact with any of the colonies that were established during the early missions?" Jake nodded. 3 so far. The colony ship New Horizons completed its mission to the Kepler 442 system about 50 years ago and established a successful settlement. They had no idea that their journey had inspired galactic legends about cosmic wanderers. When we made contact with them, they thought we were joking about the alien fear of humanity. What about the others? The generation ship Pioneer's Dream reached its destination but suffered a catastrophic failure during the landing process. The colonists survived and built a thriving civilization, but they've been isolated for over 2 centuries. They're eager to reconnect with Earth and learn about everything that's happened since they left. And the third? Jake's expression grew more serious. The ship Eternal Journey is still traveling. They're about 40 years away from their destination, and they've been in space for over 300 years. When we contacted them and explained what had been happening in the galaxy, their reaction was intense. Patricia could imagine. The crew of a generation ship that had been traveling for centuries, suddenly learning that their journey had made them the most feared legends in galactic history, would need time to process that information. Are they continuing to their destination? Yes, but they've requested that a joint human-alien diplomatic team meet them when they arrive. They want to make sure their colonization effort includes representatives from other species. They're calling it the first truly galactic colony mission. The changes weren't limited to space exploration and diplomacy. The revelation about humanity had triggered a renaissance of scientific and cultural exchange throughout the galaxy. Species that had spent centuries preparing for cosmic judgment were now free to pursue their own interests and development. Engineer Ryan Parker had been working with alien scientists to develop new technologies that combined human engineering approaches with alien innovations. The results were remarkable. Faster-than-light drives that were more efficient than anything either humans or aliens had developed alone, life support systems that could adapt to the needs of multiple species, and communication devices that could translate not just languages but cultural concepts. "Admiral," Dr. Carter said, pulling up a new report on her screen. "We've received some fascinating data from the Synthetic Commonwealth. They've been analyzing the psychological impact of the fear removal on different species. What did they find? Across the board, every species that lived in fear of the ancient return has experienced massive increases in creativity, scientific innovation, and social cooperation. It's as if removing that fundamental fear has freed up enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy that can now be directed toward positive goals." Patricia found that particularly interesting. Humanity had accidentally become a limiting factor in galactic development, not through any hostile action, but simply through misunderstanding. Now that the fear was gone, the entire galaxy was experiencing a golden age of discovery and growth. "There's something else," Dr. Carter continued. "Several species have reported that contact with humans has helped them overcome other fears and limitations in their own cultures. The Krell have started questioning their rigid military hierarchy. The Ethereals are exploring scientific pursuits they had previously considered too worldly. The Zaphirians are undertaking space exploration missions they would never have attempted before. The observation deck of Harmony Station had become a popular gathering place for beings from across the galaxy. Patricia often spent her evening hours there, watching the ships come and go while talking with representatives from different species. Tonight she found Velkithra there, looking out at the stars with what humans had learned was a contemplative expression for his people. "Admiral Reeves," he said as she approached, "I have been thinking about the irony of our situation." "What irony is that?" "For 2,000 years my people and many others lived in fear of the ancient return. We built our entire civilization around preparing for judgment by beings we thought were cosmic forces. But now that we know the truth, that humans are simply explorers and dreamers who refuse to let the vastness of space stop them from reaching for the stars, we find ourselves more inspired than we ever were when we were afraid." Patricia looked out at the busy space lanes around the station, filled with ships carrying beings from dozens of different worlds, all working together on projects that would have been impossible before first contact.